Hello, friends. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm your host, Zen Garcia.
To Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. 100% listener supported radio. Reporting the endangered. Unafraid. Right here, where information never sleeps. Revolution Radio!
Most are afraid of unknown depths, skirting shores thinking world flat, and with the island girls in celebration of new religion. Nobody led me or said this way. I sailed alone on makeshift raft with wind as companion. Fate for deliverance, confidence enough to assess new disposition. Seekers of lost paradise may seem fools to those who sought the other world. Welcome to Momentary Zen with Zen Garcia. Visit www.fallenangels.tv. You're listening to Revolution Radio.
Hello and welcome, everybody, and thank you again for joining us for another live broadcast. This is Zen Garcia. I'm your host. The show Momentary Zen here on Revolution Radio, and I am again joined by my son, Justin James, as we continue our ongoing series on the Illuminati Secret Covenant and Protocols. This is the 7th in the show, and I do believe that we are on the 6th protocol. So a total of 28, if I'm correct. There is still quite a bit to cover, but as those of you that have been listening in know, these writings are intriguing, to say the least, and certainly they do give us a snapshot into the minds of the New World Order elites and the agenda, the plan that they would put forth and play out over what seems centuries to bring us to where we are in regard to current events, and certainly seems to be exact with regard to how it has all played out. But anyways, Justin, are you there, son?
Yeah, welcome everybody. It's great to see you all. I know it's been a while since we've been live for one of these studies through the Illuminati Secret Covenant. And we are about a third of the way through, so we've got plenty more to cover and a lot of really interesting information. Of course, I do want to give a shout out to everybody joining over at youtube.com/Zen Garcia. Welcome Catherine and Marilyn, Will, Adrian, Gypsy, Zach. Zach said it's been a while since he caught a live show, so glad that you're able to come and hang out. Good to see you. Carol, Tammy, of course, welcome, sister. Thank you so much for coming and moderating the chat and getting rid of the spam when it arrives. And thank you, everybody, for keeping the peace and the love. Welcome to Mindy and Lisa R. and Jamali. Will, good to see everybody. And I'm excited to get back into the study, into the swing of things. I know Ezra was born, and then suddenly we got COVID, and it was a long time coming. So yeah, I'm glad to be able to join again. Thanks for your patience, waiting for us to resume this show.
Yes, we do appreciate everybody out there, and certainly everybody understands, with fatherhood and Ezra coming in to join us here in the world, and what a great blessing that has been. And so, how is everybody, and Ella and Joy?
Doing okay. I know last week during the AMA we had brought up that Ezra's blood test had gotten flagged for something, so we did go in for further testing, and now they're referring us to an immunologist for even further testing, but They didn't send us to the emergency room or anything, so we're hoping that it's not anything that's too big of a deal. But yeah, just keeping Ezra in our prayers, of course, and ask that you would do the same. I just lift him up that he would be healthy and that all of the blood tests and results and everything would come back with nothing serious and even just nothing at all, that he would just be a healthy boy. And Eliana is doing great. Her molars are coming in, her back teeth, so they say it's 2 times as painful as the front teeth. So she's been teething really hard this week, and it's been great fun for everyone whose parents out there who's gone through this, gone through the motions of their children teething. It has been detrimental to our sleeping schedule, but it's all good. We have we've just kept a few extra cups of coffee in the pot throughout this week, and yeah, prayerfully we'll have plenty of energy to get through the show. And yeah, Joy is doing great. She is very healthy and happy as always. We're just very blessed. Always grateful.
Awesome. Well, yes, of course, we will ask everybody to pray for our family, and we thank you all ahead of time for having done so, and know that we are all praying for you as well. But yes, do you remember where we were exact? I thought it was like
Yeah, I think you're right. It's on the 6th protocol.
Okay. And if I am correct, I was reading, and so I will pick it up with number 4 and then allow you to go into the next one when we get there. Anything else that you want to bring forth? Any current events or particular headlines?
Current events. What's there to talk about? Everything and nothing at the same time. It's
right.
The same old ridiculousness that's going on, and as you say, the dog and pony show, and
yeah,
it's typical war and famine and plague, manufactured events that are just furthering the same agenda that we've seen furthered for quite a while now. But yeah, I was really excited to see you and Gary's show on Russia and end times, and I know tomorrow night he'll be joining you again, so I'm excited for that show tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Y'all can catch Gary Wayne over here, and y'all are going to be discussing China this time, so that should be very interesting as well. So, but yeah, other than that, just a lot of the same old stuff. I did notice that with the whole Mar-a-Lago invasion by the FBI of Trump's property, that people that are conservatives are now being labeled as domestic violent extremists. So, be careful. What you say and how you go about business. Because apparently even parents are just being put on terrorist watch lists for wanting their children to have the right to breathe oxygen when they're at schools and not have to abide by dystopian laws that limit their breathing and their capabilities to gather and socialize and things like that. But that's the world we live in. I feel like the whole society is being put under for some reason, which we'll probably discuss today in this 6th protocol, the takeover technique. Yeah, I'll pass it over to you and we can get into it.
All right. Number 4, the 6th protocol. And yes, it will, I'm sure, align together. The aristocracy of the Goyim as a political force is dead. We need not take it into account. But as landed proprietors, they can still be harmful to us from the fact that they are self-sufficing in the resources upon which they live. It is essential, therefore, for us, at whatever cost, to deprive them of their land. This object will be best attained by increasing the burdens upon landed property in loading lands with debts. These measures will check landholding and keep it in a state of humble and unconditional submission. Just a real quick comment. You can see how in this country they are building, like $300,000-$400,000 houses everywhere, even $200,000 houses, but there is no affordable housing for the lower income and middle class, even, and rent is out of control as well. And so many people are not able to find places to live. And we have this whole new population of homeless people in the country that are working and trying to maintain their jobs and status, and yet are not able to find anywhere to live. And so that's an unfortunate aspect of this crisis, but we see that, this is part of the agenda and that they will continue to push this whole protocol.
Yeah, and you see
Uh,
with all land, of course, we're supposed to be in the land of the free, right? But you can't have property without paying tax. You can't have land
right,
without having to have dollar bills to pay your annual taxes. It's pretty insane that you can't just, like they say here, be self-sufficient. You can't just go
right,
out and buy some property in the middle of nowhere and just grow your own food and just live, off the land. You have to earn dollar bills, pay. That's part of the debts that they keep you in. And like you said, if you're living in a place where a city is being raised up or a city is well established, it's really crazy because you just can't get land. It's insanely expensive. And I know in Seoul, Korea, it's like $2 million for like a tiny piece of property, with a home on it, and then you barely have any land, and you're surrounded, by high rises. So, like they said here, they're really depriving people of land as the Babylonian system grows. I know here in Georgia we have a few really major cities. We have Atlanta, and then we have Athens, where the University of Georgia is. And just throughout my lifetime, I've seen the highway that connects Atlanta to Athens. I mean, it's like an hour and a half drive, but every city that's located along that highway is starting to grow up as like metropolis, as these huge
right,
cities. And like you said as well, the property values are just going insane. And in one hand, it's like it's good for people who were invested. They can, get out and sell their properties, but it's the banks that are, making the most of it because they're the ones that are
benefiting, yeah.
getting interest on the loans. People think that they buy land, but it's just the government and the banks that own everything still, and we're just paying interest to the banks and making them more wealthy, more powerful, and then we're also paying more taxes, more property
Mhm.
taxes with all those transactions. And the people, of course, are just, uh, I like to say, it's not the land of the free, it's the land of the freely enslaved. Let's put it that way.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, it's unfortunate. All right, continuing. Number 5. The aristocrats of the Goyim, being hereditarily incapable of contenting themselves with little, will rapidly burn up and fizzle out. At the same time, we must intensively patronize trade and industry, but first and foremost, speculation, the part played by which is to provide a counterpoise to industry. The absence of speculative industry will multiply capital in private hands and will serve to restore agriculture by freeing the land from indebtedness to the land banks. What we want is that industry should drain off from the land both labor and capital, and by means of speculation, transfer into our hands all the money of the world, and thereby throw all the goyim into the ranks of the proletariat. Then the goyim will bow down before us, if for no other reason but to get the right to exist. One other thing that was mentioned, and as you mentioned it, is about gardening and growing food. And now, because of the Paris Accord, they are taking that benefit from people, and they are also not allowing, because of global climate change or whatever, that people are no longer able to have gardens or to grow food. Farmers are being told to not grow anything, and they're even getting paid. And we've been covering this on this show for over a year now. But in this year, farmers have been paid to not grow anything, and they've been subsidized money from the government to destroy their crops even. And so this is really affecting especially farmers in Europe, and there has been a huge uprising which has not been reported against, but the farmers are shutting down streets, setting up blockades. They're dumping manure on city, on the courts and the cities, as far as the places of governance, and they're really, voicing strongly their opposition, which is good, because if people are complacent, just take it, things are going to escalate and get worse. And we can see that, according to these protocols, they don't just want control, they want total domination and annihilation, to the point where they can destroy people, ruin lives, and have people starving. There was even something that came out on the United Nations talking about how starvation was a good thing because it keeps people, forces them to have to work. And of course, there was outrage on this, and it got quickly shut down. But yeah, this is the kind of insanity, the mindset of these elitists, these globalists. Did you want to comment?
Yeah, that was an article titled "The Benefits of World Hunger" that was on the United Nations website, so you can look that one up if you're interested. It's called "The Benefits of World Hunger." Yep, not surprising, right? And, what's the benefit? The United Nations, of course, a globalist organization that wants to be more empowered, to have more reach throughout the world. And what could they benefit from people being hungry? What could they benefit from people needing to reach out to someone bigger than themselves to be fed? Just like we in Jacob's time, they all had to. All right, yeah, in Jacob's time, when his son Joseph was sold to Egypt, they had the famine, 7 years of famine. Where did everybody have to go? They had to go to the giant empire of Egypt, where Nimrod's lineage was ruling. And the same thing now. They want to have control over the agriculture, like we see here. It says they want control over agriculture. And as you mentioned, Europe right now is being hit really hard. Of course, all around the world, these regulations for what they call climate change is really starting to take a huge impact on farmers, on private farmers, on private industry, and it's all turning to commercial, right? It's so hard for farmers to make profit to pay off all of their property taxes and of course everything
Right.
else, and to actually to live comfortably that they're selling out to these big commercial organizations.
Yeah.
And even some of the private ones or even the commercialized ones in Europe now, I think it was, I forget exactly what it was. It was some big percentage, like 30 or 40% of cattle farmers in Europe are being shut down. I think it was a specific country, but they're trying to shut down cattle farming because, cows fart and they produce methane, right? And they're saying that that causes global warming. So they want to reduce the amount of cows on the earth. And I don't know if anyone is familiar with American history, but this is one of the ways that they gained control over the Native Americans. They, in order to gain control over the food supply, that was one of the ways that they were able to defeat the Native Americans in war. They actually went out and they slaughtered 60 million buffalo because the
Right.
buffalo, they were the main food source. They were the main source for
Yeah.
basically everything for the Native Americans. The leather, the fur, the everything that was on the buffalo was used by the Native Americans, and it was mostly the food source, especially in a lot of areas where there's not too much agriculture. They literally lived off the buffalo, and after they killed, the colonists killed 60 million buffalo. It just reminds me of exactly what's going on now.
Hmm. Yeah, there's a massive push to make food that people dependent on just a few massive corporations, the Archer Daniels and those type of conglomerates, uh, and they want to control every aspect. And for those that have never seen Soylent Green, well, that's kind of where we seem to be headed. All
I
right, let's
wanted to make
continue.
one more comment that
Sure.
when this happens, not only do the colonists or the quote unquote globalists, the big elitists move in and take over people, they control the future generations of those people. So if you see what's happened to the Native Americans, as soon as the buffalo were taken, they were made to be dependent. Either they were slaughtered or they were made to be dependent on the government, right? On the invaders.
Right.
And it's not good food that they're given, right? If you look everywhere that America has conquered or liberated, as they say, everywhere that has been liberated by US, they're sent relief supplies and they're sent, what's supposed to be humanitarian aid, right? But it's
Right.
like nowadays
Genetically
it's like
modified.
Pop Tarts and like Capri
Hmm.
Suns and like it's all super sugary stuff, and it's stuff that it's impossible to be healthy when you're eating these things.
Hmm.
And especially on the reservations where the Indians were sent in modern day, we have a generation of people who grow up on gas station food. And because of that, they are suffering all types of health issues, of diseases from
Right.
diabetes to just obesity,
Right.
and cancer. And it's all due to their diet. So there are
Hmm.
some pushes now from some natives to actually bring the buffalo back, and they're trying to, raise buffalo
Yes.
again, and
Praise God.
it's an awesome movement. And
Yeah.
shout out to the natives who are trying to be healthy and trying to take care of their people. It's something that really touches us because, of course, we have
Yes.
native blood from our Apache Indian side. But it really is. It's tragic that it's not just the natives. It's literally everywhere. You just see it's white bleached flour and
Right.
super sugary like Coca-Colas and things that people are being raised off of. Even in America, the people that are on food stamps are going to Walmart and they're picking up
Right.
these really cheap, really unhealthy foods, and it's the only thing that they can really afford. They're being controlled economically, and it's all, of course, part of this huge pharma system to keep people sick, to make money off of them. It's really an insane cycle of control and a continuation of a monopoly of power by the elitists. It's a brilliant plan, and they have perfected it over thousands of years of
Yes.
controlling and of growing their ways and their little puppet strings throughout the world.
And they've used this modus operandi over and over wherever they have expanded colonialism, the colonization, and same as with the native peoples here, and putting them into, the worst places where you can't even grow crops or food or feed your people. The natives are having to try to learn to utilize that land to grow crops. But I thought the story about them trying to return the buffalo was awesome, and I pray that they are successful in doing so. But all right, let us continue. Protocol 6, number 8. In order that the true meaning of things may not strike the Goyim before the proper time, we
Wait,
shall
were we on
mask it.
7? I think we're on 7.
Oh yeah, you're right. You're right. Hold on, I went too far. Yes. To complete the ruin of the industry of the Goyim, we shall bring to the assistance of speculation the luxury which we have developed among the Goyim, that greedy demand for luxury which is swallowing up everything. We shall raise the rate of wages, which, however, will not bring any advantage to the workers. For at the same time, we shall produce a rise in prices of the first necessaries of life, alleging that it arises from the decline of agriculture and cattle breeding. We shall further undermine artfully and deeply sources of production by accustoming the workers to anarchy and to drunkenness, and side by side therewith taking all measures to extirpate from the face of the earth all the educated forces of the Goyim. Um, and certainly we are seeing how, all the benefits, all the industry was moved overseas so that they could utilize cheap labor, and all the manufacturing of products, things that were made here in the United States that many of these corporations moved their manufacturing bases, their factories and things, to places like China or other third world countries where they don't have to pay for the benefits of their workers or care for you know, the um, the unions that are working for equal pay, and as far as taking care of families with a living wage. They just decimate all this by removing the jobs from our nation and from other, Western industrialized nations, moving them to places where they don't have to care about the workers, the people that are just grateful to have jobs, and the industry move in there, and then they take advantage. And this has been the way of it for the past at least few decades now. And this is really caused America to suffer and other places in the world, because this kind of thing has been done everywhere that the people were in demand for, you know, privileges, and not even privilege in the manner of excess wage or anything like that, or just certain healthcare rights, but just basic uh, equality, to be treated well and to work for a company that looks after them in the manner that they look after uh, the people that they're working for. And it's just a shame that these elitists are so um, stingy and so greedy that they would rather just do things that are twisted like this in order to cause people to continue to suffer instead of alleviating that suffering.
Yeah, there are a few things I think should really be highlighted from this paragraph here. First off, is that it says that the rate of wages is going to increase, right? It says at the same time they're going to increase prices. So you see that, right, with inflation.
Inflation,
And
yes.
for decades upon decades, the wages of workers has never kept up with the rate of inflation. People
yes.
are continually getting paid less and less. I don't care if it's a $15 minimum wage. You're still making so much less, because
Right.
inflation has continually been insane. Even though they're claiming that this month we have eliminated inflation. I don't know where they get
Right.
that from, but totally insane. Lastly, or I guess secondly, up here it's talking about luxury, right? And that they have developed luxury, and that the demand for luxury is swallowing up everything. And really, how many people do you know live like that? I know that we've said this before, but we should really not need name brand clothing.
Right.
Get your clothes at the thrift store.
Thrift store.
Go
Yes.
on the days that it's all discounted because they're trying to get rid of inventory, and just be happy with it. You can find some nice material. I don't know about name brands, but you can find really quality
Yeah,
clothing.
You can find that too. Absolutely.
But I mean, the whole desire for luxury, the luxury that true elite people have is not like Chanel and Gucci, and all these big name brands, right? Like they are just in a totally different world. Those things that we're talking about, Chanel and Gucci and these name brands, these are just things that are made literally to keep us enslaved and to keep the middle class from growing, and to just continually pour money from the lower class. I feel like is targeted the most because we save up, for months to try to get that one ring for our fiance, or that one, handbag that she's been eyeing every time we, go to the mall. And just the point that we go to the mall and just walk around, and that this thing called window shopping is popular, right? Stuff, like we just dream about having these things and these materials that have absolutely no real value. They will never give you any return on your investment, right? I mean, instead, look at like saving up for a down payment on a home, or like, I think that's probably the best thing. Save up for a down payment on a home that you can then, either rent out a room in, or that you can just totally rent out. Look for ways to make money off of your money. I think you told Joy and I that your money is an employee, right? Like really,
exactly,
try to figure out how you can save your money, because really your money is a representation of your time. You spend an hour, you make X amount of money, unless you're making a salary or unless you work for yourself. But still, your money, that your income is just a representation of your time. Don't just give your time to the elite who have set up these big companies like whatever name brand you think is cool. It's not cool. They are just trying to siphon money out of us and to keep us enslaved. The whole concept of luxury, the whole MTV generation. My generation is so guilty for this. I grew up thinking that Abercrombie and Fitch and Hollister and Lacoste was the absolute necessity for my clothing. Like, I had to have this. I had to be cool or I wasn't going to be accepted. The world wouldn't like me. I wouldn't ever get married, like that's the mindset that we're growing up in. But I really pray that everyone here, of course, it's like, don't care. Just don't care about that. Don't participate in that slavery. But lastly, from this paragraph, I wanted to mention, they are accustoming. All right, let me see. We shall further undermine artfully and deeply sources of production by accustoming the workers to anarchy and to drunkenness. This was another thing that reminded me of the natives. Not only did they come, they killed the buffalo. Somebody said there was no way that there were 60 million buffalo, but yeah, the estimates are 40 to 60 million of the buffalo were killed. I mean, it's insane, but that's what happened. But not only did the diet get ruined, but they also introduced things like alcohol, and this is something that they make easy access to, right? But it's also something that's just like luxury. It's literally swallowing up people's money. Cigarettes. It's swallowing up people's income, swallowing up their time. Because remember, money is a representation of your time. This drunkenness is something, and cigarettes and drugs, these are things that everywhere you look in our time, in our generation, it's just being sold to you. It's being beaten into you that this is the way to live. This is normal,
Right.
Who doesn't have a beer with their fried chicken? Who doesn't, have beer with their buddies on Sundays, after church watching football? Like, that's...
Or spend on the weekends, you go out with your friends to the clubs and you spend
for sure,
a whole what would be a whole dinner for one drink. I mean, just
yeah. Joy tells me sometimes she goes to meet up, or she used to go out with some of her old friends when she was working in retail many years back, and they would spend extreme amount of money on just drinks.
Drinks.
We look for the cheapest thing on the menu, and the friends are getting drinks that cost more than the food that we eat. And we're like, man, that's not the way to get ahead. That's not.
No.
That's definitely a way to stay enslaved. But as we said earlier, it's the land of the freely enslaved. The elitists here have developed an economy and an industry, right, of all of these things for us to just get lost in.
Right.
And to
even credit
drain us.
So that you can, spend in excess and borrow money to have a good time, and then have to pay interest on that as well. I mean, they have it down to a science how to keep people enslaved.
Yeah, absolutely. The whole credit card thing is something we've talked about before, but that is a slippery slope. Just avoid it. Don't spend money you don't have. I understand some people are in situations where you have to feed your family. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, for this life of luxury, never put a handbag on your credit card and then expect to pay it off later on. That's a ridiculous concept. But yeah, let's move on from this one.
Yeah, anything of excess, but Yes, number 8. Avoid name brands because it's all just a game to keep you enslaved. Don't buy into it. Don't play
And
into
new
it.
cars too.
Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly. All right, number 8. In order that the true meaning of things may not strike the goyim before the proper time, we shall mask it under an alleged ardent desire to serve the working classes and the great principle of political economy about which our economic theories are carrying on an energetic propaganda. Oh, and that was the end of Protocol 6. And so, yes, we can see that, again, the whole economics there, because they have put on a big Ponzi scheme of creating money out of nothing and loaning it to governments at interest. It's all a huge charade. And they have established it, legalized it, and this is the way that Satan, the Illuminist, and the eye at the top of the Illuminati pyramid, which we see on our currencies, they keep us all bogged down, and they use our own desires to play into the materialism that we see through the advertising that is found on, most radio and television programs and in the movie theaters and things of that nature. They are using mind control, brainwashing for you to support the system that they put into place, the matrix, to keep you, basically broke and chasing the American dream. And so don't get caught up in it. Um, and I'll turn it over to you, son, if you want to read this one. We're in
Yep.
Protocol 7.
Yep, well, on here. Definitely, this is going to be an interesting one. Protocol 7,
Yes.
Worldwide Wars. So, just thinking about it, definitely war is a banker's game, right? These are ways that the elite get ahead from time immemorial. Even when the Nephilim were fighting amongst themselves, when one conquered the other, you get the resources, right? You get control over more land, more territory, more people. That's the basics of war, right? It's just for one party to exercise rulership over another. It's really unfortunate, and I love it in the
Yes.
millennium. In the millennial prophecies, we're told that after the Babylonian system, after the globalist government is defeated and the Antichrist is annihilated, that every man will sit under his own fig tree.
Yes.
Isn't that just a beautiful prophecy? That just that
Mhm.
everyone is going to be at peace, and they're going to be given their lot. And we're not going to be making war anymore. Not going to be just we're not going to be hateful to one another. Can you just imagine the peace that is to come
Oh, I
when
know. I'm so looking forward to
you're
it.
right? You're not sitting under the bank's fig tree, sitting under your own fig tree, and when the Most High gives you something, nobody can take it away.
Right?
It's going to be a great time. But yeah, let's get
Yeah.
into it. The Worldwide Wars, Protocol number 7. In summary, it says encouraging an arms race, universal war to check Goyim opposition and the guns of America, China, and Japan. All right, so if you are just tuning in, please do go back and watch the first few episodes. We break down who wrote this, the perspectives of the Zionists who wrote this, and then their perspective on us, the Goyim, and especially the first few episodes where you read that it's admitted that it's actually fallen angels that are participating in the
Yes.
writing
Right.
and in the exercise of these protocols. So let's get into it. Number 1, paragraph 1. The intensification of armaments, the increase of police forces are all essential for the completion of the aforementioned plans. What we have to get at is that there should be, in all the states of the world, besides ourselves only the masses of the proletariat, a few millionaires devoted to our interests, police and soldiers. Throughout all Europe, and by means of relations with Europe, in other continents also, we must create ferments, discords, and hostility. Therein we gain a double advantage. In the first place, we keep in check all countries, for they will know that we have the power, whenever we like, to create disorders or to restore order. Just pausing right here, like to create disorders or to restore order, it's literally just like a button that they press. And just talking about the whole pandemic thing,
Yes.
for the first year or two, really like the first 2 years, since everything shut down originally, I might have known a couple people that got sick, and then everything started shutting down. Everything was taken so seriously, and the world just, was like put on pause, right? And this huge disorder was created. And then this year, like, everyone I know is getting sick, right? Even Joy and I, for our family, for the first time in 2 years, we finally got sick. But there's no, requirements. There's no like testing when you go to a restaurant. There's no masking anymore. Like they just don't really care anymore. And it's just like all of a sudden it's a button that was like pressed. It's crazy that they have a button like that, And all right, so moving on, it says all these countries are accustomed to see in us an indispensable force of coercion, through propaganda, through the media outlets. They can coerce people to follow anything. In the second place, by our intrigues, we shall tangle up all the threads which we have stretched into the cabinets of all states, by means of the political, by economic treaties, or loan obligations. That's a big one, right? Loan obligations. And how do they do that? Because they control the banks of the world. In order to succeed in this, we must use great cunning and penetration during negotiations and agreements. But as regards what is called the official language, we shall keep to the opposite tactics and assume the mask of honesty and complacency. In this way, the peoples and governments of the Goyim, whom we have taught to look only at the outside of whatever we present to their notice, will still continue to accept us as the benefactors and saviors of the human race. The Federal Reserve is doing the best that they can for us. They're trying to create monetary policy that's best for everyone.
Yeah, and look at Big Pharma, how they fast tracked all the snake bites and got everybody the hokey pokey, anybody that wanted it, and now they're providing all the boosters every time a new weird something comes out. Which there's always going to be something. They keep manufacturing something, and so people are now mind controlled into getting in line and paying for it and going to their local CVS every time the news media says, "Oh, there's a new variant. Go get your booster."
Yeah, it's crazy that they are looked at as the benefactors and saviors of the human race.
Man,
absolutely the opposite. But it's funny that apparently here they know that they're the opposite, because they're saying they're going to pretend to be these things. They must know that they're definitely not. Moving on, it says we must be in a position to respond to every act of opposition by war with the neighbors of that country which dares to oppose us. But if these neighbors should also venture to stand collectively together against us, then we must offer resistance by a universal war. Interesting. I have always really been under the impression that like all sides of the war are manipulated by the same people.
Yes,
Um,
true that.
but it is interesting, the history that Gary shares, and then it's also, of course, interesting how Revelation does identify three what I consider political or governments. You have the beast, which Babylon rides, and then you have the dragon, which gives power to the beast, and then you also have the false prophet, of course, which makes the whole world worship the beast. So they're in cahoots, but maybe from the outside we can't really see that. Maybe
Right.
you have the communist world, you have the democratic world,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that they I think that they're being manipulated by the bankers, right? I know they're being funded by the same people,
Right.
but maybe there are some oligarchs. Gary has done so much research on all the families and the bloodlines,
Yeah.
and it's really really cool to consider all that. That there really are some aristocratic families that have lived on even to our time potentially that
Right.
do have some political sway and some power in certain lands, and that they do stand up against the Zionists. I doubt that. I doubt that they have any means to really oppose, but it it seems like we are in the final stages of the complete annihilation of independent aristocratic uh, individuals. Of personalized power in governments. I feel like everyone who did stand in opposition to the Zionists by now they have already been either executed or replaced by a puppet, right?
Right. Right. Yeah, everybody's towing the line. I mean, even, in the protocols early on, we saw that they even admittedly how a long time ago there had been a chance for people to come together and to rise up against them, but that they have long since established their monopoly over power and control, and now they just hide everything in plain sight and laugh at us, and dare us to even stand up to get in front of the tank, so to speak, and the machine try to stop it.
Yeah. And to me, the biggest tragedy is, it's not them that are doing any of the fighting. No, it's our
Oh
children.
yeah, they manipulate us into doing it.
It's
Yeah, they
our
make us
children
into the
who they
cannon
send
fodder.
over there to fight other
Right,
people's children who are trying to stand against the people who have enslaved us. You know,
right.
it's really insane. It's tragic. Um, yeah, let's go on. It says we must be in a position to respond. Okay, we already read that part. We must offer resistance by universal war. We've already seen a couple of those. The principal factor of success in the political is the secrecy of its undertakings. The word does not agree with the deeds of the diplomat. Huh. You ever know that diplomats say things that they don't do things that they don't say?
Yeah,
Who knew?
that is the definition of a politician.
That's just acceptable by now, isn't it? That's just what's
Right?
expected, even. It says we must
Yes.
compel the governments of the Goyim to take action in the direction favored by our widely conceived plan, already approaching the desired consummation by what we shall represent as public opinion, secretly promoted by us through the means of that so-called great power, the press, which, with few exceptions that may be disregarded, is already entirely in our hands. So, back
Yes.
over 100 years ago, they already claimed uh, to have the press in their hands. And going back, we gave this history lesson before, but the Library of Alexandria was the largest library in the world. The second largest library in the world was the Library of Pergamos. Pergamos was the area where papyrus was invented, and with that, tons and tons easy access to writing things down and disseminating the world's earliest flyers, right? You have the world's earliest newspapers. So if you look at who owned that, it was the Roman Caesars and the Egyptians with Cleopatra. And they, of course, combined those things. And at the Library of Alexandria, the Library of Pergamos was gifted to Cleopatra. They put everything in the Library of Alexandria, and supposedly it all burned down. So, was it a conspiracy? Sure, that's why I'm called a conspiracy theorist, right? I think it was.
Right.
Yeah. Only a couple minutes for break.
Yep. Before break, and then we'll be getting into protocol number 8, which is on the provisional government. But you can see how these protocols are following this agenda of establishing control, taking over, creating, funding both sides, creating a false left paradigm, controlling the press, utilizing propaganda, on and on and on. We'll be right back for second hour.
Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda, and Kenya.
Your support is crucial for the development of the ecclesia of real truth seekers.
We thank you for joining us in hosting Secrets Revealed, Momentary Zen, the Digital Readers Club, Ask Me Anything series, and other shows that have helped lead so many to the truth of salvation.
To become even more involved, please visit patreon.com/sacredwordpublishing, where you can partake in exclusive, interactive, patron-only content and help us continue shining the light of love in this darkened world.
When Justin and I found out we were having a little girl, we named her Eliana and started dreaming of what life would be like with her, where we would take her, what we would teach her, and of course, what we would read to her. One day we walked around a bookstore looking for books we might want for her and found nothing. So we started brainstorming what exactly we would want. Even from a young age, we wanted her to know and understand the heart of God and hidden truths that are in ancient biblical manuscripts like the Book of Enoch, and the idea of the Prophecy for Children series was born. Justin got hard to work, and Praise Yah released the Prophecy for Children series. We are grateful for the support and amazing feedback from others who have been wanting the same for their children. We just found out we will be having a son, and we are excited to grow our family and to keep writing books for our children to share with our truth-seeking family. To order these books today, please check out the children's store at sacredwordpublishing.com.
Because we know who they are and what they do. This is what they do, and we we must fight back! You can torture us and bomb us. Fire is catching. And if we burn, you burn with us.
Good evening.
Are you awake yet? I hope. We've tried and we've tried for years and years to use passive resistance and loud voices to make a change. The time is over. Your governments around the world have no other goal than to decimate your entire existence at the hands of the bankers and the elites. The war is coming, and it's your choice to decide if you want to be a warrior or a victim. Denial is not a choice anymore. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station on the planet. Not giving up. Revolution Radio. All right, thanks for listening while we took that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And now we're going to get back to your host.
All right, welcome back, everybody, for a second hour. I am your host, Zen Garcia. I'm joined by my son, Justin James, this evening as we continue our introspection and chapter by chapter, verse by verse of this Illuminati Secret Covenant and the protocols of the learned elders of Zion. And also, we just want to send back our love to all of you that are in the chat room that are thanking us for doing this study and for bringing this information forward. It's our great honor and pleasure to serve the Most High in this capacity. And so we appreciate just the fellowship of having all of you join us every night when we do our shows, and for us to come together in this manner. It's really a great privilege for us to even be able to speak on things like this when so much of the world is fearful and still, uneducated when it comes to the truth and the reality that we are contending with in this world. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but the powers, the principalities, the rulers of darkness, and spiritual wickedness in high places. And so thank all of you for making such information a priority, and for wanting to know more and wanting to share with your friends and loved ones, even at the expense of being ostracized and blacklisted and made fun of, because those are certainly things that all of us have had to contend with in trying to share truth in the manner that we do. And so I applaud all of you in your efforts to, make important the truth and to try to share that with others. All right, let us continue with protocol number 8, provisional government. And the legal justification for audacity, super educational training, control of bankers, industrialists, and capitalists. We must arm ourselves with all the weapons which our opponents might employ against us. We must search out in the very finest shades of expression and the knotty points of the lexicon of law justification for those cases where we shall have to pronounce judgments that might appear abnormally audacious and unjust. For it is important that these resolutions should be set forth in expressions that shall seem to be the most exalted moral principles cast into legal form. Our directorate must surround itself with all these forces of civilization, among which it will have to work. It will surround itself with publicists, practical jurists, administrators, diplomats, and finally, with persons prepared by a special, super educational training in our special schools. These persons will have consonants of all the secrets of the social structure. They will know all the languages that can be made up by political alphabets and words. They will be made acquainted with the whole underside of human nature, with all its sensitive chords, of which they will have to play. These chords are the cast of mind of the Goyim, their tendencies, shortcomings, vices, and qualities, the particularities of classes and conditions. Needless to say, that the talented assistants of authority, of whom I speak, will be taken not from among the Goyim, who are accustomed to perform their administrative work without giving themselves the trouble to think what its aim is, and never consider what it is needed for. The administrators of the Goyim sign papers without reading them, and they serve either for mercenary reasons or from ambition. This reminds me of the whole the bill that came to pass the Patriot Act after the events of 9/11. Hundreds of pages of law, not even read, and given the name the Patriot Act. Like, if you did not sign it into law, you were unpatriotic and you were against those things that would make our country a safer place. Because, of course, the boogeymen are after us and the terrorists, they're going to get us unless these kind of laws are signed. And don't worry about reading them because we've already done all of that for you. Just sign off and everything's good and go back to sleep. And we'll take care of you and your families, and you got nothing else to worry about. And so, this is the kind of thing that happens all the time. And the elitists, the shadow government, they know how to work the agenda. They will pull off some extraordinary false flag event, and then they'll bring in these sweeping changes. They'll pass into law whatever it is that they've been pushing or trying to get, and it's usually for the benefit of the fascist control systems, the corporations that own through the lobbyists the vote of the different representatives, whether left or right. All of that is just, a facade, a dog and pony show, as we talked about, and even as they've spoken about themselves in the occult technology of power, the false left-right paradigm, that they only give you the illusion of choice by providing you two options, which really don't even support the wide array of feelings and emotions and the way that people would really want to be represented in government over their cares, their concerns, their worries, and yet they give you two choices, left or right. All third party and everything else in between, that doesn't matter. You don't get to choose, or you don't even get to be represented by Green Party or Labor Party or whatever. Those don't even have the funding to be relevant in this country. And so, they tell you, and it's all right here in black and white, hidden in plain sight. And this was written over a century ago. Justin?
Yeah, really good points. Really interesting, again, how there's always this reference to special schools. It makes me think of Harry Potter. I don't know if anybody saw that, but
Right. Yeah.
that was popular
Yeah.
when I was in school. And, it's like this super special, super huge school with, hidden knowledge, and, you're learning all these really amazing things. But really, the special schools in reality, they're learning how to manipulate people. And they're
Right.
learning, as we've mentioned before, they're learning sciences at a level that we will literally never comprehend, because
Right.
in our schools, at least for the first 12 years of our children's education, from elementary to high school, you're basically learning the same thing. I went to English class for like 12 years, right? I went to math for like 12 years. I went to social studies for 12 years. I went to science for 12 years. And you're learning, like with math, yes, you're learning a little bit. You're like, graduating to algebra and trigonometry and calculus, but it's such a slow, grueling pace, and it's so boring that it exhausts you. That you just get so, at least I did. I literally would just get so bored at school.
Right.
And I think it's
It's
that
a
way
waste
for,
of time.
yeah, it really is. I think it's that way for anyone who's like, I don't know, just can think for themselves. And like,
Yeah.
I think that most children could probably cram all of that information that we learn up to graduation in by the time we're, in fourth or fifth grade.
Right.
Because
Right.
children are so smart.
Yes.
So smart. They can really learn. And you see this in a lot of countries, and maybe here in America too. I'm not sure, but you have prodigal children who,
Yes.
they're children prodigies, right? They're like in college in sixth grade, and you're like,
Right.
oh,
Right.
that's so cool. Impossible for my children, but wow, good for him. Like, no, your children can do it too if they're, raised properly, which I don't know how to raise. I don't know if Ella will be ready, right? And I have no idea. I don't even care that she goes to college. I don't want her to go to college. But the point being that, all of these sciences and what it says here, the educational training in their special schools, the types of things that people need to know to make nukes and to make genes, and I forget what it's called, when they're like manipulating DNA to create cells, artificial cells and artificial cloned animals and things like this, the CRISPR technology.
Right.
The types of
CRISPR.
things that you need to know, those types of things, is like pretty basic for these people, right? They've been given
Right.
the sciences directly from heavenly beings.
Right.
And the people that were with the Creator when He established the earth, the fallen angels,
Right.
the bloodlines that are in control, these elitist bloodlines, they were taught the sciences by those fallen angels. And
Yes.
the information, not only has it been passed down, but it's still being communicated. I believe, because I've seen testimonies that these individuals, some of these families are still in contact with fallen angels.
Right.
Yes. Maybe via demonic entities or possessions, things like that. Kind of like what we see with the Witch of Endor, calling up Shem from the grave to speak. Like I feel like they have the same capabilities to do so with the the leaders of hell, or the leaders
Right.
of Sheol,
Yes.
Tartarus. And I don't know what they're doing with CERN, but it
Right.
definitely they have some satanic dances and things going on and rituals that they do outside of
Right.
that. Anyways, I think I'm getting off track, but the point is that they have these really special schools. They have really intense information that, we just don't have access to. And because of that, they are the ones that are in the consulting positions. They're the ones that are in the Fauci area, right? Above Fauci, right? He's just a puppet
Uh-huh.
that was thrown out. But
Right.
well, when you think of that position, like the top position, like you think of the Pope, right? They're above that. They're like beyond that highest puppet, and they're the ones manipulating, pulling the puppet strings from above them, right?
Uh-huh.
I just think that it's really crazy to think about the secret schools and things like that.
Well, yeah, it's absolutely true. And, that whole thing with Harry Potter, that kind of gives you an insight on it. Because the mystery schools have been established for a very long time. And even like the Rhodes Scholarship and things like that, where they choose people like even Bill Clinton was a Rhodes Scholar. These different leaders of industry and people that have been groomed to be presidents, even Barack Obama and people like that, they've been selected for a very long time and given these special scholarships and made part of mystery schools. Even Skull and Bones, like John Kerry and George Bush and other elitist families, many presidents, would be presidents, that were part of these organizations, and they were involved in occult practices. They were controlled and manipulated from the things that they informed their handlers on. These kind of things, like even with the paperclip, Project Paperclip, and all the Nazis that were brought in to head these different organizations, even like NASA and MK Ultra and the CIA and all of their uh, illicit, um, experimentation using psychedelic drugs, even back in the 60s, Timothy Leary and all of that. I mean, they have done a lot of very shady things um, in order to control and to manipulate the fate and destiny. Think about Bohemian Grove. That's where all these, high level elitist people get together and have these massive homosexual orgies. And they're the leaders of industry and politics, and they're gathering together, and this is the way that they celebrate and party together. I mean, it shows you the depraved nature of the way that they are. Their natural inclination is to, be abominable in those kind of manners. But it's very real. We see in the book of Enoch that, the wise of all which they chose, they were given these technologies and groomed, taught in all these occult practices, even abortion, going back to that far back in history. Even makeup and how to dye clothes purple. I mean, just all kind of strange things like the makeup industry. I mean, but that is such a big thing. And look how much money is made even in this day and age from the people that run and control fashion and makeup and things like that. And so all of these things were spoken about: metallurgy, even how to create beverages, beer, alcohol, spirits, even the creating musical instruments, that these things were achieved by the sons of Cain, the establishment of brothels, um,
Weapons.
taverns, yeah, weapons of war, and even tools, to farm, even though they weren't able to utilize that to because they weren't blessed to work the land, but they were blessed to make money off of those that could. They were the ones that created weight and measures, that developed cities, and so yeah, these have been the leaders of industry for very, very long time, going back thousands and thousands of years in the mystery
Establishers have been.
schools. Yeah, exactly. Secret societies. They were the masons that knew how to develop and build encyclopedian architecture. They were the ones that were hired by, the Catholic priesthood and popes to create churches and things of that nature. So they had capacities and abilities that were considered special, and they passed these kind of things on to their own in secret knowledge. And so, yeah, these are things that have been part of these groups for a very long time. And, the attraction of having secret knowledge and being able to um, initiate people into such a mystery school, I mean, that can be a powerful tool for the elites, and certainly it has been utilized by them to hold on and to create control over the masses for a long time.
Yeah. When you think of like a good FBI or like CIA secret
Right.
movie,
Right.
right? They kind of reveal like some things. I definitely think the people that write most of the famous movies, they're very well acquainted with the occult. Most likely they come from
Yes.
the occult, right? And they reveal like little bits and pieces of how they manipulate people and how to read people and
Yes.
how to get a social advantage above them and to especially with governments and manipulating governments and all of that. You see little bits and pieces slipped out, right? But their understanding and their capabilities are far beyond even what is just conceptualized in the entertainment world. But yeah,
Right.
let's continue on because this is getting
Yeah.
more and more interesting.
Yeah. One more comment. Like the movie Men Who Stare at Goats, and how they had the remote viewing and how they were able to utilize the strength of thought to create and to do these kind of occult practices. So yeah, all very interesting stuff. All right, number 2. We shall surround our government with a whole world of economists. That is the reason why economic sciences form the principal subject of the teaching given to the Jews. Around us again will be a whole constellation of banksters, industrialists, capitalists, and the main thing, millionaires, because in substance, everything will be settled by the question of figures. And certainly, they've created a whole science of economics, fractional reserve, how banks are able to lend out at interest, the whole credit system. It all supports, the rich having money, being able to gain more because of their privilege. And that's what they've established as well as with the central banks and printing the money and loaning it to governments at interest. It's all a Ponzi scheme, and yet nobody understands it. Most Americans don't even understand that the Federal Reserve System is a privately owned bank and that they are charging interest to the people to pay down the debt that our governments are borrowing from them. And who are they to loan, our government's money at interest so that the people have to pay down this debt? It just shows you what kind of control they have, and most people don't even understand it. All right, continuing. Number 3.
I don't think
For a
we weren't
time.
done.
Oh.
Around us again will be a full constellation.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
no, maybe you're right. Everything will.
Yeah, I did
Oh,
read
yeah,
through
okay,
it.
sorry.
Yeah, no
really great point again, though. And I think it's interesting. I'll just make one comment before we get to number 3, that it says the principal subject of the teaching given to the Jews is economic sciences. Why is that?
Right.
When
Right.
these are supposed to be God's chosen people, and the
Right.
prophets have always said, and the teachers have always said that the wise men would meditate in prophecy
Yes.
and in the law of Yahuwah.
Right.
Why is it that their focus is on economic sciences? It's kind of like they're more focused on establishing a world order for their own Messiah, who they will anoint and choose, as we read last time.
Exactly.
Huh.
And
Seems
yes,
like more like the
Satan is the
Antichrist, right?
ruler. Yeah, exactly. They support the Matrix, and Satan is the one that has contemporary control over this realm, and certainly materialism, and even as it says in Ezekiel 28, how he established and trafficked all the wealth of the world and gathered it and established it for himself, even back in those times. So, yeah. And that's the way he can control people too. And those that serve him is by teaching them this manipulation. It is magic. It's alchemy, creating wealth from nothing. All right, continuing. Part 3. For a time, until there will no longer be any risk in entrusting responsible posts in our state to our brother Jews, we shall put them in the hands of persons whose past and reputation are such that between them and the people lies an abyss. Persons who, in case of disobedience to our instructions, must face criminal charges or disappear. This in order to make them defend our interests to their last gasp. And, again, that lets you know that the consequences of not towing the line or following their agenda is death, and
That's why.
horrific death.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, they don't just kill you, they're going to torture you. They're going to make you pay and suffer in a way that it's a lesson to all those that, are also conducting the torture and the death against you.
Well, they're just throwing them under the bus. Like with blackmail here, you see that so often that somebody's past will all of a sudden show up and ruin their political careers, right? It's so often, but this makes it really obvious that literally every politician has something to hide. Because at any moment, apparently, according to this, they could just be exposed, right?
Yes.
They've all done something bad, something really bad.
Right. Yeah, that, reminds me of Rusty Nelson and how in the Franklin cover-up, he was the photographer that was used to take pictures of all of the politicians that were engaging in the pedophilia and to catch them in compromising positions and with video so that their vote was essentially controlled the whole time they were in office. And whenever, they got out of line, then of course these kind of things would find their way to some independent news, even though there is no independent news media. But, they would get outed.
Definitely. Well, that was
all right.
Very interesting protocol.
Yes.
Not sure what this image is. Like Kabbalistic something.
Yes, education, the the Kabbalistic, and that is, one of their mystery schools and sciences, the mysticism, the occult, which the next protocol is on re-education. So.
Yeah. All right, protocol number 9, re-education. The meaning of anti-Semitism, the source of all engulfing terror, and boosting of false theories. That's something that is definitely sticks out today. Boosting of false theories.
Yes, absolutely.
Of false news, right? False
right,
news.
scientism.
But all right, let's get into it. Chapter or verse 1. In applying our principles, let attention be paid to the character of the people in whose country you live and act. A general, identical application of them until such time as the people shall have been re-educated to our pattern cannot have success. But by approaching their applications cautiously, you will see that not a decade will pass before the most stubborn character will change, and we shall add a new people to the ranks of those already subdued by us. The words of the liberal, which are in effect the words of our Masonic watchword, namely liberty, equality, fraternity, will, when we come into our kingdom, be changed by us into words no longer of a watchword, but only an expression of idealism, namely into the right of liberty, the duty of equality, the ideal of brotherhood. That is how we shall put it. And so we shall catch the bull by the horns. De facto, we have already wiped out every kind of rule except our own, although de jure there still remains a good many of them. Nowadays, if any states raise a protest against us, it is only pro forma at our discretion and by our direction, for their anti-Semitism is indispensable to us for the management of our lesser brethren. I will not enter into further explanations, for this matter has formed the subject of repeated discussions amongst us. That's really interesting, that there are repeated discussions between this man. He wrote this for his son. Am I recalling that correctly?
That's a cult technology of power.
Oh, okay. Well, apparently
the protocols were written for the royal elite controlling the different countries of Europe.
It is interesting, they of course pass back and forth so many letters, right?
Yes.
But this is just one of them. Apparently there's so much more that we don't even have. And normally if this was a book that was just written by a random person that, was pretending to be a Mason, to, pretending to give out all these things to pin it on the Masons or the Zionists, right? I don't think you would see a line like this.
Right.
It's been the subject of repeated discussions amongst us in the past. You would never see something like this. It makes me, it legitimizes it more for me that this is actually between Masons, right? But it is funny that they do, of course, identify themselves as Masonic right here.
Right.
But we shouldn't have had any surprise from that anyways. But yeah, that quote, the right of liberty, the duty of equality, the ideal of brotherhood, I feel like that was basically the Georgia Guidestone summed up, wasn't it?
Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm.
All right, I'll continue on. For us, there are not checks to limit the range of our activity. Our super government subsists in extra-legal conditions, which are described in the accepted terminology by the energetic and forcible word dictatorship. That makes sense, right?
Yes.
When you think of who their dictator is going to be.
Right. The world ruler, the Antichrist.
That's what they've always thought, that the Messiah would be this person that comes and, destroys the Goyim governments and rules the world, right? With an iron staff, even with an iron rod. He would come and rule, and apparently they think that it's their job to prepare that government for the Messiah to rule, which is a joke. We know, even according to Daniel's prophecy or Daniel's interpretation of the dream of Nebuchadnezzar, it's not us that establishes a government for the Messiah to rule.
Right.
I feel like every organization in the world, in the current world, is penetrable by the enemy and by the agents of darkness.
Yes.
That's just how it is.
And it has been. They are always controlled from the top down. That's just the way of it.
Yeah, and I guess that's what this whole protocols, all the protocols before are talking about. That there were
That's what they
organizations. Teach. There were even
yes.
beneficent organizations, people that wanted to do good, people that wanted to rule a peaceful nation. But they have infiltrated. They have conquered. How interesting is it that they have revealed their methods of conquering? But these days, what can you do about it? They're just flaunting at this point because they have amassed I feel like they're in the end game, and they don't care how many people wake up because there is literally nothing that you can do except for surrender your life to the one true king who will come and will destroy this enemy government, the Babylonian kingdom. Right? He will come, he will conquer, and only those who have put their faith in him, who have put their faith in the sacrifice that he made upon the cross and his victory over death, only those who come to trust in him will have a place in that eternal kingdom. No one that
Amen.
There's not a liar or a hater or a person that is a killer or an adulterer,
a backbiter.
Yeah, that will enter into that kingdom. I mean, of course, we're all equally unacceptable.
Yes,
but through the blood of the Messiah, we have been covered with a new garment because we're all filthy. Even the prophet said that all of our righteous works are like filthy rags. We could never clean ourselves. We could never, wash our clothes in the washing machine enough. We're just getting dirtier and dirtier. But he has a white linen cloth that will cover your soul. And he has a new name for you that he will give you if you trust in him. And yeah, that's my only hope, at least, because I know that I'm unacceptable and unworthy.
Yeah.
I have done so much wrong. And I have an imperfect and impure heart in me right now, just as I believe everyone does, as it's said by Jeremiah the prophet, that the heart is wicked. Our hearts are wicked.
Fall short.
Even though Disney says we should follow our hearts, right? Do you think that Disney is a Masonic organization?
Oh yeah, without a doubt. A lot of even the symbolism. I mean, people can look up the sexual iconography that is found even in children's, cartoons, and without a doubt, once you see it, it's obvious that they have put it there subliminally to influence, and somebody is doing it purposely. And so, yeah, I definitely think that there's somebody that knows what's going on that is telling, people, and of course it's not all of them, but there's definitely some people that are told to embed into the children's programming certain mannerisms, behaviors, to get the kids to act out in a certain way, and also to influence them sexually in a manner that they don't even realize. We don't even realize when you watch, the different cartoons, but when it's brought out and you then are aware of it, it's undeniable. So yeah, there's something going on.
It joins in a lot of parenting groups, on Facebook and online and on forums, and there's this super popular children's show on Netflix called Cocomelon, and I'm sure everyone has probably heard of it. If you haven't, then Now, it was like on the top 10 list on Netflix for so long, even on like the adult section. It's like Cocomelon is so great. And there were so many reports that, people were, of course, letting their kids watch Cocomelon because it seemed like that's what everybody is doing. Every parent is doing, right? Letting their kids watch Cocomelon and learn the songs from Cocomelon. But then there were all these reports that kids were just starting to act out like crazy after they started watching this thing. And we even watched some of the songs from Cocomelon. They just have all of these like tones and notes and pitches that I don't know what it is. It just like seems to encourage certain acts in children that are definitely unwanted. It's crazy how much they understand music and the effect that it has on us, like you said, like making people have sexual intention through just different rhythms, different beats, different cadences, and the pitches that they sing at, and the different sound effects. It's really insane. But there's this old cartoon show called Animaniacs from when I was a kid. Like I was very young in the 90s. And I remember maybe 10 years ago now, it came out on Netflix that you could just watch all the old Animaniacs episodes. It was on something, maybe not Netflix, but I remember watching the first couple episodes of this, and it's so crazy. Like you were saying with Disney, they put so much subliminal, hand signs and occult, shout outs in there. But it really seems that in all of the plots that there is a very clear elitist structure. Like in the Animaniacs, it was like I don't remember it perfectly because it was a long time ago, but I just remember watching that first couple episodes, and they were like subservient to the man on top, and then you see things like Daffy Duck and Mickey Mouse and things like that, and they have all of these phallus symbols and things like drawn into them, and then there are all of these episodes that were directed towards children of them being subservient to an Illuminati like mastermind. I don't know if you've ever seen the pictures or the videos of that. But I remember 20 years ago or whatever, these maybe not 20 years, like 15 years ago, these videos were being put out online of parents who were concerned that their children were watching these things, and they would just clip, they would make montages of all of these types of things, and it's literally in like every single show. It's so crazy. Right. So crazy.
Yeah, we don't even realize. And then, most parents, they put their kids in front of the TV, put these shows on without even realizing what is in them, or that they have these kind of influences, and so they're not aware. And unless you know subliminally what they're doing as well, it's hard for us to realize what and how the kids are being influenced, because they're sitting down and just watching episode after episode after episode after episode, and they their eyes are catching a lot more than what the parents are, in being aware of what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Really interesting. The re-education,
Right.
So like all across the world, even in the Middle East. I remember Joy came back with a story when she went to Tunisia on a mission trip that people in the Middle East, they really don't like Westerners, obviously, right? Like they want to destroy the West. That's like Islam's mission statement, right? Like destroy America, destroy Israel, blah blah blah. But because they were Korean, because Joy had a Korean passport, and the missionaries she was with were Korean, even though they were like known to be missionaries, they actually weren't attacked. And it's crazy because the reason that people are accepting of Korean missionaries is because even in the Islamic nations there, they love Korean pop culture. Korean dramas, Korean music.
Yeah.
It's like it's so like beloved. But it's really it's an extension of Hollywood. You think of Hollywood, which is used in witchcraft. Hollywood is like literally re-educating the world into what is acceptable behavior, into what is an acceptable personality, into how to be cool, how to be, a liked person, things like that. But now in Korea, they are basically doing the exact same thing. They use the exact same methods of influencing culture, of influencing the society, into re-educating them into what is acceptable. And especially in the past year or so, the past 5 years maybe, you've seen the liberal agenda just like taking off with, your first 10 years ago, it was like the final episode, you would see the like main characters that were falling in love throughout the whole, series, they would hold hands finally, right? Now they're like sleeping together in episode 1, and you're like, I can't watch this. Like, what? Terrible.
Right.
Now it's like, you have single moms with kids, and you have divorce is like super popular. You have the LGBTQ agenda is becoming super popular. Of course, like transgenderism transgenderism is one that you see. Of course, Lisa would say that she sees it more than everyone else, right? She would probably say everyone is, but there are so many people that you look at and you're like, huh, I wonder if that's a guy or a girl. I can't even tell. And I think that, all of that is being pushed out to the younger generation. Through our entertainment, we're being re-educated, and our morals, our foundation of who we are is being totally lost. Even in North Korea used to be called Pyongyang, the capital of North Korea, used to be called the Jerusalem of the East. Of course, after the war, the Christianity was removed from there, but still in South Korea, it was a very Christian nation. But now all you see, I'm not saying all you see, but a large majority of the churches are just businesses. I guess it's the same in America, right? The same everywhere. It's just businesses. But any time you see a Christian in a Netflix series or in any popular Korean series, they're always super hypocritical, super crazy, or super what they call outdated. Like, it was some scientist 100 years ago or something that said God is dead. Now everyone quotes, God is dead. And you're just like, Niche is dead. The guy that said that is dead. And God is not dead. Like, it makes no sense. Like, that the infinite could have an end. Of course, it doesn't. He's infinite. He's great. But that is the indoctrination, the re-education, as we're reading here, that continues to take over. And I feel like that entertainment choice is the biggest one for our generation.
Yes.
But yeah.
Oh,
go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that, it is through television and the media and Hollywood that they are so easily able to change and manipulate the behaviors and mindset of the masses in such an easy manner, and to expose them and to normalize abomination in the way that, Alice Bailey talks about in the 10-point plan to bring on the New World Order and to destroy family and Christian values across the board. And most certainly they have succeeded in doing that. In what it was in the 60s that they were talking about this in this 10-point plan. And here we are in 2022, and it has all been implemented in the way that they have talked about and wanted.
And that's a dictatorship, right? They've
Yes.
gone into these industries and made it impossible for private individuals to really make an impact. Like, you have to be indoctrinated for one. You have to be, I guess, hazed into their fraternity or sorority to participate in things like the education system, or even in upper elite science positions and educational positions. And it really is it's a dictatorship that they have established. But I'll continue on here. It says, I am in a position to tell you with a clear conscience that at the proper time we, the lawgivers, shall execute judgment and sentence. We shall slay and we shall spare. We, as head of all our troops, are mounted on the steed of the leader. We rule by force of will because in our hands are the fragments of a once powerful party, now vanquished by us. And the weapons in our hands are limitless ambitions, burning greediness, merciless vengeance, hatreds, and malice. They're just manipulating everything that already exists. Every person, every politician, every government. They've just moved across the world and infiltrated. They don't even have to reorganize. They just infiltrate and operate what's already there for their own agenda, for their own powerful grabs,
Yes.
It says in paragraph 4, it is from us that the all-engulfing terror proceeds. We have in our service persons of all opinions, of all doctrines, restoring monarchists, demagogues, socialists, communists, and utopian dreamers of every kind. We have harnessed them all to the task. Each one of them, on his own account, is boring away at the last remnants of authority, is striving to overthrow all established form of order. By these acts, all states are in torture. They exhort to tranquility, are ready to sacrifice everything for peace, but we will not give them peace until they openly acknowledge our international super government and with submissiveness. That's interesting. Definitely reminds me of 1 Thessalonians 5:3. When they say peace and safety, then sudden destruction will come.
Yeah.
I wonder if the elitists are aware of this. That it says they're not going to give peace until everyone is bowed down to the super government, right?
Uh-huh.
I mean, when the enemy's government is established, and they have another thing coming. I just wonder. They're working so hard in vain.
Yes.
Of course, the enemy knows that, right? I wonder if his disciples know that.
I don't think so. I mean, to a certain degree, yeah, some of them. And if they study well enough, then they realize they're on the losing side, and hopefully they get out and they break their ties and they are maybe allowed to leave, which that's not, the norm, but certainly they are punished if they do break their ties with these groups, but and especially if they start to expose them. But hopefully they wisen up, they waken up to being on the losing side. And why would you want to serve on the Titanic,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good point. If you know it's going down.
Yeah.
Definitely. I guess they just want the luxury that is afforded to them while it lasts.
While they're here, yeah.
I guess that was the same with I forget the book that you published in The Priesthood of Jesus Christ. The book that you published, remember, in the Word of the Lord, the comparative analysis of the hidden memory.
Yes.
What was that guy's name? It started with a D.
Theophilus.
Theophilus, yeah. He
He
knew that the Messiah was a Messiah, but he decided to betray his knowledge of the Messiah because he didn't want to get rid of his status as a Jewish rabbi or as a rich guy. I guess
exactly.
It makes sense.
Yep, it does.
I mean, for the actual greedy people. Because when you do come to faith, you definitely said earlier, suffer for it. You're looked at as totally crazy. We have a couple minutes left. Maybe I'll just read as much as I can. before we
Sure.
get to the end. It says, the people have raised a howl about the necessity of settling the question of socialism by way of an international agreement. Division into fractional parties has given them into our hands, for in order to carry on a contested struggle, one must have money, and the money is all in our hands. Of course, every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation, as it said in Matthew 12:25. Great quote from whoever
Yes.
translated this or edited this. It says, we might have reason to apprehend a union between the clear-sighted force of the Goy kings on their thrones and the blind force of the Goy mobs, but we have taken all the needful measures against any such possibility. Between the one and the other force, we have erected a bulwark in the shape of a mutual terror between them. In this way, the blind force of the people remains our support, and we only shall provide them with a leader, and of course, direct them along the road that leads to our goal. In order that the hand of the blind mob may not free itself from our guiding hand, we must every now and then enter into close communion with it, if not actually in person, at any rate through some of the most trusty of our brethren. When we are acknowledged as the only authority, we shall discuss with the people personally on the marketplaces, and we shall instruct them on questioning of political in such wise as may turn them in the direction that suits us. I feel like this is CNN and all the big news stations, how they have people come in, the experts that come in and
the experts,
show you, guide your way of thinking with superficial knowledge. But I guess we'll call it an end to the reading here. And thank you again, everybody, for joining in and tuning in. It's really awesome to see the chat and everybody. I think the cartoon mention of all the Illuminati references and things, that one took off. There's a lot of great references in there to The Simpsons and a lot of old cartoons. Really crazy. Some of the cartoons that are directed at kids, it's totally insane how occultic and how terrible those things all are. But thanks again for having me on for the show, and much love to you.
Honor, son. Love you. Send my love to the family, and we're praying for Ezra, praying for all of you always. And thank you again, everybody in the chat. We appreciate you. Be blessed. And until tomorrow night, join us, myself and Gary Wayne, for continued prophecy on China.
Yeah, that's going to be a great show. Look forward to seeing everybody tomorrow. Shalom and good night.
Shalom. Good night, all. God bless.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us for this video and this broadcast. We appreciate all of you, and thank you for your patronage. Please do like and subscribe and share with your friends. God bless all of you in your seeking.